Hey, Aaron Flint here with the Flint Report podcast. With my radio show, I've gotten a chance to catch up with so many incredible Montanans, and you get a chance to hear them, but today you get a chance to see them. And first off, big thanks to the Deliver Fund and the Whitefish Podcast Studio here for letting us use their facility. What an incredible organization the Deliver Fund is. If you haven't checked them out, go check them out right now. But yeah, summer of 2024, I'm doing a live radio show out on the town here in the Flathead with our friends at KJJR Radio. And my dad, class of 1970, Whitefish Bulldog, that's why I got my Whitefish hat on today, he says, hey, you got to interview my friend Julio Delgado. And I'm like, okay, Dad, who are you bringing over? Is this another one of your beer buddies? Because my dad spent a career in the beer business. And anyway, he introduces me to Julio Delgado, who is one of the most legendary coaches in all of Montana sports history, as I understand it. And we get to talking. Holy cow, what an incredible story. What an incredible guy. Coach Julio Delgado, great to see you.
Well, thanks, Aaron. Glad to be with you.
We probably shouldn't tell any stories about my dad in the class of 70. We should probably just put that aside. That would probably not be the family-friendly episode for sure.
That would take a whole new podcast, that's for sure.
What a cool crew you guys had, though, back in the day. Just running around old Whitefish back before all the crazy development that you see today. And
yeah, what an unbelievable experience, and what a great community. Back then, certainly things have changed, but it was just a close-knit community. Anybody needed anything, the neighbors would always pitch in and help out, and it was just a great place to grow up and live in.
So a friend of mine, we worked on Capitol Hill together back in Washington, D.C., really smart guy. He played sports back in the 90s at Flathead and down in Plains, Montana as well, and he was basically telling me, look, we were at Flathead, but whenever we were playing Whitefish, he said you knew you had to be ready. And if you could survive Whitefish because of Coach Julio Delgado, you knew you were ready for the season. That's how much respect your opponents on the other teams had for you and the teams you would put together.
Well, I would imagine you're talking about Rennie Hellickson.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, he was quite the athlete, a heck of a competitor. We coached against him in basketball with the Braves and also the Lakers in baseball. But anyway, yeah, he was right. We always looked at the Kalispell game as playing the big brother on the block. We had nothing to lose and everything to gain. We had to step it up and play that much better. And finally, his senior year, we broke through and beat him. And then from then on, it became a pretty common occasion for us to beat the Flathead Braves, which is a feather in our cap since we were Class A, they were Double A, and much bigger school.
Well, I think Rennie started running some numbers. It's hard to put together sports statistics and numbers, but what did you coached also? Baseball, basketball. Didn't you even coach tennis? But he was pulling up all these numbers, and he believes that you're the most winningest coach in all of Montana history when you combine wins from multiple sports, especially.
Well, I wouldn't know that, Aaron. I couldn't tell you that, but yeah, I was. My dream was to be a professional baseball player, and my dad played professionally in Cuba, and I got all the way to playing Division I baseball, and almost had an opportunity to play professionally, and I figured that the next best thing, if you're not going to be a pro player and be paid for what you really love doing, would be to coach kids and be close to the sports. So I ended up playing or coaching the Glacier Twins here in Whitefish, and Bob McLeod brought me back. He was my basketball coach when we won the state title in 1970, and he brought me back, and I was able to get the head basketball job here. And I worked with Bob Wraith, who was legendary football coach, won a state title here for Whitefish, went on to coach at Flathead. And then, we always, when I got done playing baseball, I got together with, there was an old Jesuit priest at Gonzaga University, and he loved tennis. And he grabbed me one day in the halls, and he says, Julio, I'm going to teach you how to play tennis. And I said, sure, Father, I'll go out there and hit with you. And so we'd go out every noon, and we'd play tennis together. He was a guy that he didn't have a backhand, so he'd hit the ball on the right-hand side with the forehand, and then if the ball was hit to the backhand side, he'd just switch the racket to the left side and hit a forehand from that side. I could never beat him. He was probably at that time in his 60s, but he was unbelievably good, and he taught me how to play tennis. So when I came here, there wasn't a tennis program, and the Montana High School Association had tennis as a sponsored sport, so we petitioned the school board to bring in tennis, and of course they didn't want to fund it money-wise and so on and so forth. But we had some great kids. We started a club, and we started beating everybody in the flathead. So we came back to them and said, look, here's what we're doing. These are the kind of numbers that we have. Lots of kids are involved. They want to play tennis. We can be competitive. Can you finally, get us in and sponsor us? And finally they did that. And we won a number of state titles, and Whitefish tennis is about as good as it gets in Class A.
Even still today. And the golf as well.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of our people are probably already thinking like, okay, how did you do it? How did this guy in so many different sports build these teams? How do you do it? And I think I may have the answer, because people got to hear your personal backstory and how you first came to America, how you first came to Montana, and your love for this country and what this country means to you personally. We'll get to that in a second, but I pulled out my phone because we never script this stuff. We don't have any notes. It's just a couple of us hanging out, BSing here. But on the drive over to the studios here today, I pulled up Grok, which is Elon Musk's AI platform, and I said, hey, tell me about former Whitefish coach Julio Delgado. And I don't know if it'll play for me again here. Let me try it again. Tell me about former Whitefish coach Julio Delgado. Let's just see what AI says.
All right, AI mode activated. Let's dive in on Julio Delgado, the Whitefish hoops icon. Cuban-American refugee who escaped Castro's Cuba in '62 on one of those freedom flights, landed in Miami as a teen, and hustled his way to Montana. Coached the Whitefish High boys basketball team for 19 years, snagged a state title in '91, and piled up 326 wins against 123 losses. Stepped down in 2000, but popped back in '06. Even at 73, he's out there firing off letters to the editor, fighting for local sports and preaching gratitude for American freedom. Calls it the land of opportunity that saved his family. Total community legend, man. What's got you curious about him?
All right. How did Grok do? How did AI do?
That is unbelievable.
It just spit it out. Now, and it spit out something similar the last time when I first asked it the question, but did it get all the facts right? The state championship, everything?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, and even Morgan, the man behind the cameras here, he's got the Hello Whitefish podcast, which your wife is like the biggest fan of the Hello Whitefish podcast. But he was in your PE class back in the day, and so it was fun hearing you guys tell stories about the smoker fundraiser you used to do back in the day in Whitefish and everything.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of history, and I wouldn't trade my life for anything. It was an adventure. There's no doubt about it. What happened to me is basically what made me today. And talking about getting into coaching, I was coached at Mesa Community College. We were national champs in 1973, and I was coached by Jim Fry, who I looked at him as another father figure. Besides my father and Leroy Brown, my guardian, he was the most influential guy that in my life. Anyway, he was awfully tough, expected the most of you, made you overachieve, made me be much better than I thought I could ever be. And I coached like I was coached. And I was also very fortunate to play under Bob McLeod. We were state champions here at Whitefish High School for basketball. Our first state title, Bob McLeod
How much of it, though, obviously great coaches, but they got to have something to work with to begin with, too. Just like all those kids there was something there to work with to begin with. But how much of it was, you came here as a little kid, couldn't even speak English. Your family was able to escape. Castro's Communist Cuba. You end up in Whitefish, Montana as a little kid. You end up in the same class as my dad back in the day, would have been the 60s, I guess, back then.
Yep.
And I guess first just tell people what it was like when you first came to America, because your parents had to send you, and they weren't with you. I mean, they sent you to America, and you had to live with a whole other family. They didn't know if or when they were going to see you again, right?
Well, I'm in the process of writing a book, and about my experience coming here to this country, and some of the things that really stand out is the fact that when we separated, what happened, what started it all is my father was a patriot. He wanted to give Castro the benefit of the doubt, and the smart Cubans saw it coming and got their money out, and they're living comfortably in Coral Gables now, where my dad, everything was taken away from him, and basically that forced us to he saw communism, and we were getting in the schools. You know how communists work. They start the propaganda, and they go into the schools and start with the young, indoctrinating them. And I can remember sitting in class, and the teacher would hold up a shiny bike in front of class and say, okay, it is your duty to turn in your family members, your neighbors, anyone that speaks ill of Fidel Castro and the revolution. And if you do, this is what you get. And the next week it would be a new glove, a new bat, sometimes food, whatever. And that's how they operated.
Pitting kids against kids, families against families.
Absolutely. I remember my mom and dad looking out the windows, seeing which neighbor was going to get hauled off, next. It's because every neighborhood had, the neighborhood police, and they would tell on each other. And then obviously, if you turned in somebody, then you would get to live in that house. I mean, that's how it works.
And so this is why, it was funny listening to the Grok summary of you as a coach and in your time in Whitefish. It talked about how you'll send off, I think, fiery letters to the editor because you understand how important freedom is, and you understand how destructive this cultural Marxist communism, leftism is, which is really taking over wide swaths of the country right now. I mean, Mamdani in New York City and some of these other folks in Seattle and elsewhere.
Well, who would have thought, Aaron, that today in the United States of America, we used to, in the old days, throw communists in prison. Now they're running for Congress. Now we've got them as mayors in the largest city in the United States. We've got them running for president. I mean, it's scary to me because I've been there. I've done that. I know what it does and what it is. And to have half this country, think that that's okay, is scary. My dad's rolling over in his grave right now thinking about, how could it come here, the land of the free and the home of the brave, and we've got people, you've got the hammer and chisel flags all over our cities. You've got people, demonstrating and carrying their flags. That was the difference between the Cuban community and what was happening back in the 60s is when I came here, I wanted to assimilate. I didn't want to be different.
You wanted freedom.
It took me 6 months to learn how to speak English, and in as little as 2 years, I got rid of the accent because I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be part of this country, and my parents the same way. They didn't take any money from this government. They didn't come here with a handout. They wanted to be part of this country, and they wanted to succeed.
Which is the story of so many immigrant families that came to this country legally, and what we're seeing today now is so many of the people that are coming here, it seems like they're not coming here to be free. It's because they want stuff for free, but it's not free. You're paying for it. I'm paying for it. Our kids are paying for it. Our grandkids are going to be paying for it. So I've gotten the chance, by serving in the military, I've gotten to serve with some incredible Cuban Americans. And the only reason I say Cuban Americans is just to say that, hey, folks, families with that Cuban background, right? Because I know you kind of
I call them American Cubans.
American Cubans. There you go. That's even better. But so many great freedom fighters. You mentioned Coral Gables in the Miami area. I got to serve with some military folks down there, and just some of the most remarkable Americans with that Cuban background, and that's so much of what drove them to be patriots and to serve their countries, because that's that ethos that they came here to America with. They understand how precious freedom truly is. What was it like when the young Julio Delgado gets here in 4th grade? How were you accepted? Because I've interviewed some of the first black quarterbacks in the NFL that played football in Montana, and they loved it in Montana in the 60s. Mm-hmm. They said, look, they were treated way better here than they were anywhere else. One of the black quarterback that I interviewed, he said I got called sir for the first time when I came to Montana. How was young Julio Delgado treated when you first got here?
I'll tell you, that's why I owe this community so much, and I get choked up when I start talking about it, because they took me in. They really did. And that was kind of a motivator for me, to be successful. It was my background and what I had to go through. And, for this community to take me in and make me part of it, there was only one instance. And, that tells you a lot about what Winnie and Roy were all about. And these people were amazing. Anyway, it was early on, and there were people going to the school board meetings saying, at that time there was 16 Cuban kids here in Whitefish and probably 30 some in the Flathead Valley. And it was all done through the Catholic diocese. And we got shipped up from Miami up here to Helena, Montana, of all places. And I can remember flying in the middle of winter, never seeing snow, not being dressed for it, and it was just a culture shock. So anyway, Whitefish was just that kind of community. But Winnie and Roy, immediately, what happened is that people were going to the school board meetings and worrying about Cubans infiltrating their community, okay, and that they were going to lose accreditation, and all these concerns about us Cuban kids coming here and being part of the school system. And Winnie and Roy and a lot of different people from the community, patriots, came and said, hey, these kids, they're no threat to our community. They're not communists. They're fleeing communism. Mm-hmm. They're not bringing it to this community. And so obviously the school had no issues, and we were able to stay. But, funny part of it is, out of all those kids that were here initially from Cuba, I was the only one that ever stayed and came back and made it part of my life and my home. So, but yeah, it was an easy transition for me, because immediately they made me feel welcome.
So did that drive you in sports also?
Well, without a doubt. I looked at it as constantly having to prove myself. Number one, I was small. Number two, my background, where I came from. I was a minority, and I had to prove myself. And so that drove me. That fueled me. And, I think that had a lot to do with any success that I had.
But in a similar way, too, that kind of drove a lot of the kids that you coached over the years. Whitefish used to always be considered more of a blue-collar town, a railroad town, a timber town. And so you were saying those blue-collar kids, boy, would they work for that team.
Absolutely. We in the old days, it wasn't an issue to, push a kid out of his comfort zone, hold him accountable, and force them basically to overachieve and be better than they thought they could be. And now, today, I'm afraid that I wouldn't last a week, Aaron. There's no way that I would. I was a Bobby Knight disciple,
You'd be throwing chairs down the hallway or something,
well, I
throwing
did.
kids down the hallway or something.
Well, no, I wouldn't
Maybe
lay
not that
hands
far.
on anybody,
Yeah.
but I was awfully hard on kids, and I didn't expect any more from anybody that I ever coached that I would expect of myself. In fact, a lot of the times when I ran because we lost or because something wasn't done correctly, I would always run with them because maybe, just maybe, I didn't prepare them well enough, and that's why the mistakes were made and so on. So, it had to hurt to lose. Losing wasn't acceptable, and that's how I was brought up, and I was never going to lose because, I was going to make sure that I did everything in my power to be successful. And that's when you learn the most, is when you lose. You learn from your losses more than you learn from your wins. And even if we won, if we didn't do things right, we were running on Black Monday, believe me. Yeah.
It's interesting, as America is approaching our 250th birthday, it really does seem like our country is kind of at a turning point, or a fork in the road, trail. Which path do we go down? Do we go this way? Do we go that way? What would your message be, or what's going through your mind, especially as you talk about the schools? Like, what would you be telling teachers today, superintendents today, kids in the classroom, parents?
Well, Aaron, this woke stuff has to go away. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, there are two genders. Let's get real. I mean, I don't want to offend anyone, but let's get real. I mean, this ideology that we're trying to ram down our kids' throats is just ridiculous. And I think kids have got to be held accountable. Kids basically, I found, they crave discipline. They crave structure. They want to be, told and expected to do things a certain way. And, what happens oftentimes is that if you're not getting that discipline and that accountability at home, then it gets thrown on to the teachers and to the educational system. And what happens oftentimes is the educational system wants to take the easy way out. And so, we have school boards and we have administrators today that want, everything to go hunky-dory, and they basically sometimes don't do what's right. And, they want to keep everybody happy.
I remember when George W. Bush, I think, would call it the soft bigotry of low expectations, in the classroom. And then more recently, we've seen like critical race theory being pushed, that basically it was twofold. One, it was basically saying that, well, if you're a white kid in the classroom, well, you're fundamentally racist because of the color of your skin. So because of the color of your skin, you're bad.
Unbelievable.
But then on the other hand, it's also telling maybe a young Cuban kid that just got here, or another kid with a different skin color, that, well, you're also bad because you're never really going to be anything without our help. You're going to be a permanent victim. And that also is fundamentally racist, and fundamentally it just leads to bad outcomes. I mean, basically, like you were talking about when you came here as a young Cuban kid in America, as like you just wanted to fight for freedom and for opportunity and to prove yourself. But if everybody had said, oh no, just go easy on him, or treat him differently because of whatever, I can't imagine how destructive that possibly could have been.
Oh, I wanted to earn my own way. I mean, I didn't want anything given to me, and that came from my parents. My parents, when they came to this country, they weren't looking for a handout. They came here because they had to. They lost everything in Cuba. It was taken away from them, and they had to start over. Can you believe a guy who was a professional baseball player, lived off the family business, owned farms, basically, helped run a shipping company in Cuba. My mother had maids, having to come to Whitefish, Montana at 50 years old and going to Van Aken farms out here outside of town of Whitefish and be on his knees 8 hours picking potatoes. I mean, how demoralizing for a man to have to go through that, and he was willing, he was happy as hell just to be here, and to be free. And so he did whatever he had to do. And they moved back to New York where my uncle was, and they worked 2 jobs. My mom worked as well. And, we wanted to be part of this country, and we didn't want handouts.
Do you remember any final words that your dad shared with you, or just a lasting
quote
that he would share with you?
Yeah, I think the thing that really sticks with me is that I always wanted to be a professional baseball player because I wanted him to be proud of me. And so when I got done playing at Gonzaga University, and I looked at the draft, and I wasn't on the draft, I had some invitations to come and try out for some major league teams. But if they don't draft you, if they don't have any money invested in you, your road to success is pretty tough. I was recently married with Manilda, and I wasn't going to do that. I had a teaching job here and so on. But I remember calling my dad and telling him, "Dad, I'm sorry. I did not get drafted. I'm not going to be a professional baseball player." And he basically said, "Son, I'm proud of you no matter what. It doesn't matter. I'm proud of what you accomplished. No issues." And that's what it was.
And your sons are doing pretty well too, huh?
Yeah. Both of them have a work ethic, and that's what was passed down to me from my parents and Winnie and Leroy here in Whitefish, and I take that seriously, and my boys do too.
This could be the riskiest decision that I could make for this discussion here. But, okay, I brought up my dad. You guys were school kids together. He was class of 70. You ended up graduating class of 71. He's a character for anybody who knows him. He's an entertainer. He's a really good singer. The talent skips a generation, so I will not sing for anybody, thankfully. But I remember I was in Shelby, Montana, doing a radio show, and I ended up chatting with Steve Williamson. And a great guy, so it was like, oh yeah. So he starts telling stories about my dad, and apparently they both delivered beer together here in Whitefish back in the day. For Lee Distributing, it would have been back then. It's Fun Beverage now, but they would deliver beer to the bars in town. But apparently Steve would do all the work. He would be stocking the beer, and my dad would be singing by the piano or something with the bar staff while Williamson had to do all the work. So,
I believe it.
So I'll bet you probably have a story or two kind of like that.
Well, yeah, he was constantly entertaining. I mean, he was, not only entertaining, but what a jokester. I mean, the guy had everybody in stitches. Both times that we've had our class reunions, it was just old Buddy again, and he just had everybody laughing and having a great time. But that's him. I mean, we really enjoyed having him be him all the time, and he's just a great guy.
Well, it's so fun too. With Whitefish Mountain being right here, Big Mountain, I still call it Big Mountain, but we'd go night skiing, my brother and I, and he'd be down at the beer stube, probably serenading somebody, and we'd ski down when we were done and meet him at the beer stube, and just a ton of fun memories.
The guy never got embarrassed about anything, ever, anything. No, really. And talk about it didn't matter, he would go up to the most gorgeous women, and I mean, how young guys are, and so there's no way I'm going to...
Especially kids today, they don't know how to talk to girls, apparently.
Well, he knew how to talk to women. It was unbelievable.
Oh, that's hilarious. Well, I should also say, man, I don't know if Morgan from the other side of the camera wants to throw out a question or something, too, just because, man, he's got the Hello Whitefish podcast, and... Mr. Whitefish over here, he was in your PE class. I love the story about how if you didn't have your PE clothes with you, you had like little pink silkies that they would have to wear if the kids didn't have their gym clothes with them.
Yeah, it didn't happen very often because they just didn't like that. So we had a number of issues that we dyed pink. And so if you didn't bring your clothes, then you'd have to wear the pinkies.
Did you ever get stuck in the pinkies, Morgan?
I don't think so.
Never?
I mean, we had a locker, so our gym clothes stayed there, and I don't know if they reeked or not. But I think what was great about Whitefish High School is we had, thanks to Ray and Jerry Boxich, amazing foreign exchange students, and a lot of them were phenomenal athletes.
Absolutely. Yeah, and speaking of foreign exchange students, we were fortunate enough that year that we won the state title, the second state basketball title, back in 1990. Ray brought Luca Grassilli from Italy, and I kept bugging Ray. I said, "Hey, Ray, you get the World Cup coming here with all these soccer players coming to play soccer at Whitefish. Get me a basketball player." So he finally did. He got me Luca Grassilli. He was 6'2" kid, long arms, great player. Other than he didn't know what defense was. In Europe, they don't play any defense. So I don't think he could even spell defense.
Well, they
but
got
anyway,
America to provide defense.
by the end of his tenure here, he was a great defensive player, and he was an integral part of us winning another state title. Only the second one in Whitefish High School history. Yeah.
When you were talking about the woke sports, I was at a Whitefish football game recently, and as luck had it, I was sitting right in front of the parents. So they had the 10-year anniversary. They recognized the state championship football team from 2015. And there was a young woman who actually played on the football team that year. She was their kicker.
Yeah.
And apparently she set state records that may even still hold in that class. And it just so happened that her parents were sitting behind me, so I was chatting with them, and I said, "Well, what was it like with her, being the only girl on this football team?" And she's like, "Oh, those boys were so good to her.
Oh, sure.
She had her locker room to get changed and everything, and they would post 2 boys from the football team outside her dressing room to guard her and to guard that door the entire time. They were so respectful, and I just thought that was just one of the coolest stories ever.
That is cool.
I
remember
we have
her.
all this talk about locker rooms and all this type of stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. But Whitefish has always had. You go into that gym and you see, so many state title flags up in that gym, and there's a lot of history. And Whitefish has always been successful because they've had great coaches and we've had great kids to work with.
Well, Coach Delgado, it's been awesome catching up with you and just hearing more of your story and really getting a chance to see you, and more importantly still that our listeners out there get a chance to see you as well. Morgan, anything else you want to throw out there that we didn't cover? I mean,
you remember when I was my legendary prom date? Do you remember I won the writing contest to take a supermodel to our senior prom? Do you remember that?
No.
Oh man!
But tell me,
I got to hear this story.
Class in '99. There was a snowboard. It was Surfer Magazine did a contest for this company called Reef Brazil. It was like these 2 Brazilian guys that make like Brazilian footwear.
Uh-huh.
And at the time, they could never do this now, but all of their ads were like these Brazilian women in bikinis. And it was always from the side. You never saw their face. You always saw their butt. And they had a contest where it's like, write an essay on why you deserve to take one of these Reef girls to your senior prom. And so I wrote an essay, and I got 10 and 1. And so they flew one of these girls up.
No way.
They flew a photographer up who was Dave England, who would later go on to be one of the main guys in Jackass.
Oh, really?
And it was like in all these, and it was the first time that they had prom at the O'Shaughnessy Center. And so it was like people were up in the brewery and stuff because they wanted to see the butt model.
Yeah.
How did I ever miss that one?
I don't know. I remember you coming in to me and being like, "Morgan, where's your butt model?" Or maybe it was what's her name? The other PE coach.
Your wife will be
Jackie
proud.
Fuller?
Fuller,
Yeah.
Fuller, that was my big claim to fame.
You got to send me some photos, and I'll do a story for our radio station websites, like a little throwback Thursday, because that's great. That's a great story. That's hilarious.
That is a cool story.
That was like a classic Whitefish story.
Well, those bikinis sell. I mean, the only time that we made any money at Coach's Corner, the bar that we had up here uptown, was when we had the bikini contest in the summertime every Thursday night. And we had, Budweiser furnished the bikinis, and we had women from all over, because it was $1,000 first prize and a trip to Las Vegas. One year it was a trip to Hawaii, and women were coming all over. That place was packed. That was the only time we made any money.
That's amazing.
We would have people, offer me $500 to be one of the judges. It was a great time.
Yeah.
One of the big mistakes I ever made was try to run a bar. Not a good idea.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this was great. Well, Morgan, thank you so much. Yeah, check out the Hello Whitefish podcast while you're at it. If you haven't, highly recommended by Mrs. Delgado and Coach Delgado. Great to see you
Thank
as
you,
well.
Aaron.
This is awesome. We got to do this again, I think, too. So.
I've got other stories.
Oh, I'm sure. Wait, I should say anything else that I didn't ask you that you want to share or you want to say or anything like that?
No, it's just that I owe everything to this country, and it's the greatest country in the world, and it breaks my heart to see what's happening right now, all the division and everything that's going on. We're better than that. I think the most important thing is for us to tone things down and get back to normal and be patriots and love this country.
Well said. Great to see you, Coach. Thanks again.
You're welcome.